Uh-huh.
Hi, you're
Uh,
watching The Tattooed Psychic. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, I'm really excited because I get to have one of my favorite people I've never met in person, my dear friend Gav Barbie. Gav, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. And I was just saying before I realized we weren't recording that it I was wondering if we ever will meet in person because we have these great conversations and connection. And do you think we will, Gav?
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll definitely meet. I hope, I hope that I'll be in America soon.
I
Um,
hope so.
yeah, and I think, this is that wonderful thing that pandemic did. Pandemic introduced, so many people to so many diversities of people around the world without ever seeing each other in person. Like, we zoomed through the whole of
Yeah.
pandemic. And
Yeah.
down here where I am, we zoomed for 3 years.
Right. Australia had it real bad.
Some really well, Victoria had this crazy, let's just keep us locked down for the
Right.
longest in the world just to see what that might do.
And clearly it's helped you. That's a perfect segue into your art because I know you just did a big art show in was it Melbourne?
So I did a 3 months immersive piece in one of the regional galleries. So
Okay.
we have, big country towns we have big regional galleries. Um, so yeah, it was an immersive piece. I collaborated with a video artist as well. So we made two video pieces, and I had produced about 600 of my ice dots. And then we asked the public really to come in and get a piece of pigmented ice out of the freezer and to place it on one of the canvases that we put around and sit there for that, 10, 20 minutes and watch that transformation. So really most of that work, or most of my work, is really to see if I can bring people to a moment of contemplation. So
Talk more
yeah.
about your ice dots and your ice works because that's really what is so beautiful. Isn't that a piece behind you, that blue piece? Is that one of your ice?
Yeah, that's a new piece.
So
So just
explain the process because people don't know this process yet.
it's funny, on the weekend we was talking to a sound artist, and we were talking about the iceworks, and he was asking me, what are you trying to do with the iceworks? And I was like, it's really interesting. I don't start off trying to do anything with the works usually. But the iceworks came originally because I started pouring my paint. So I started picking up a bottle like that and pouring it figuratively. So I was doing, I was a figurative artist, and I was really blown away by this idea that I could pick up a bottle of ink and pour it in seconds and be be astounded myself. Like, I'd step back and go, "Wow, how did I do that?" Like, it was one of those magic moments where I guess you're so into your craft that the technique is no longer, a worry or a need to concentrate on that, so you can let go and just explore. And then when you find something new, it's really that beautiful thing. It's excitement. And then so anyway, I was trying to work out how could I pour a watermark. And of course, you can't pour a watermark figuratively because it's too watery. So I was buying Slurpees from the 7-Eleven, which was next to my studio, and putting paint in them and just messing around, playing. And then I froze a ice cream container of pink paint and an ice cream container of blue paint for some reason. Months and months later, I found them in the freezer one night, and I had two canvases, and I put them out, and I just, watched them, and every whatever time they would create these beautiful patterns that would then disappear. So they were ephemeral. And as an artist, I was kind of torn between two things. One, I wanted to stop them when they had a beautiful pattern. And then on the other hand, I wanted to run with them and see where they would go. So it was that beautiful thing of kind of like they had their own spirit in the sense that they were moving and shaping and changing as the ice melted and the pigments re melted. And of course, a lot of those pigments had changed their chemical breakdowns and balances because I'd frozen them.
Right.
So a lot of them reacted to each other. There was a beautiful moment one day when I put two different colored ice blocks on a canvas and the water met, but the color didn't blend. And I was standing there going, that doesn't make any human sense at all. Like, why aren't they just, they're water? And I remember a biochemist telling me one day that until your ice is completely melted, so even if you've got a quarter or even a penny, size ice block still there, the water's roughly around freezing point. So he was like, if you put a microscopic camera on there, you'd see the wall, even though to our eyes it was fluid.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, so it's beautiful things that our eyes, tell us one story. The other senses tell us other stories. And then the nature of things is telling us another story.
Right.
So for me, it looked like water, but it was still in its gel form, I guess you could say. And then so the ice works are that. I mean, and for me, I love I love the participation. I love the ephemeral nature of them. The public work started in New York quite a few years ago when I did 1,000 under the Brooklyn Bridge, where I asked 1,000 people to come place a block. And, really.
I love that you include people in your art. I noticed that after I watched videos of your last installment you did in the interactive, and the kids that were there and they were drawing and dancing. And I know that you're a big dancer as well. And I love that you incorporate that into your art. I think that I wish more artists did that, We have a famous artist out here in Seattle named Henry, and he paints on all the buildings and stuff. He's a street artist, very well known, fantastic artist. And one day he had a paint with Henry at Gasworks Park, and everyone could go paint with him and stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I love that you do that.
Yeah. Is Henry the guy that paints the dots?
I don't think he paints dots that he's known for. He paints like mystical creatures and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Look, I think that I come from, my background is theater and film.
Yeah. That's true. You do. That's right.
Yeah. So when I had finished my apprenticeship when I was younger, and I went back to the States, and I drove across America. I was 22, having my my first artistic kind of moment of trying to work out what I was and what I was doing. And I'd done an apprenticeship in the commercial arts, so I'd learned classicalism. We were a most amazing, group of people. I was living at that time in Fitzroy in the mid-80s in Melbourne. And Fitzroy was, like you had the Seattle scene, we had the Melbourne scene. It was the same thing. It was a big indies. A lot of music was coming out of Melbourne. And I ran away from Fitzroy. It was getting tired. I was getting tired of being cool Fitzroy, I guess. So I ran away back to the States, and it was one of those trips that I think there's those magic moments when you're young that you get these gifts. Not that you don't get them as you're older, but I think when you're younger, you get them, and they change your life a lot. They change your direction. And I had met somebody briefly I was just outside of New York whale watching, and they lived in New York, and they did two things. One, they took me to the MoMA, and I walked in there, and I stood in this black gallery space, and for the first time, I think in front of art, I felt like I was the artist. So the paintings were so incredible, but it was, I don't know, I just felt like I was the artist. And that exhibition was Francis Bacon, and I, at that point, was really naive to any contemporary art, and I didn't know who Francis Bacon was. You know, I was a reproductionist at that point. You know, I'd learned classicalism and how to reproduce in a scenic art way, and so that was the first thing that then kind of really changed my perspective and understanding of art, because it was no longer looking at it from an outside point of view. I was looking at it as an inside point of view. So, you know, and I have a saying that I've been using for quite a long time about that thing that, you know, as an artist, I'm an audience member. And as an audience, you're an artist. You know, your imagination is creating what you get out of it. And,
Right.
You know, in a lot of ways, the audience is the theater for me. You know, they're the ones telling the live story. I wrote a script possibly, and then they're interpreting it. So it's a beautiful way of, for me, you know, there is no difference between that audience and artist, in the sense that both are needed to create that story,
Right.
that imprint. And the other thing she did was, one day we were at the beach and put a book in my hand, and I was 22 and I had never read a book in my life, so I was dyslexic, and you know, I got through school really well, and I was lucky. You know, I was lucky as a dyslexic to get not be put down, not to suffer from it. And I said I can't read, and they said, "Oh, can you read small bits?" And I went, "Yeah, you know, I can read it." And so it was Raymond Carver, the American poet. And something about poetry clicked. I didn't understand what the words were really saying, but I understood. I felt something, and so all of a sudden I was opened up to literature. And when I came back to Australia, I was going to go to art school, and like the idea of my work being stagnant on a wall seemed so against everything that I was about. Pretty hyperactive, you know, person. So movement was this, you know, big thing about moving all the time, and things being in movement. So I realized that theater was the ultimate arts form for me. You know, it was this collaborative, it was changeable, it was live.
Right.
So I went to our national theatre school and did 3 years there, and then worked in the theatre and film for a long time. Yeah, the art, the visual art thing, I swore black and blue I would never do, and I used to just draw in rehearsal rooms, continuous line drawing. So, basis of most of my figurative work is this continuous line.
Yeah. That's
Um,
quite amazing when you're just jotting things down and you create these amazing pieces. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, I noticed a lot of your pieces, even if you look behind you, are animals. What's your connection here with the animals? And
yeah,
then,
well, I guess that's the thing. I started off doing purely figurative works when I started to exhibit, and you know, in rehearsals, I was just scribbling people's heads and what was happening in rehearsals, and I must have been 99, maybe 98. Um, I got really sick. I had the mumps, um, and I went and stayed. At that point, I was making a film, um, and I went and stayed with my friends. One of them was my producer at the time, and another was an actor friend of mine. And to get better, and on the day I felt better, for some bizarre reason, I went to the zoo. And I'm not a fan of zoos, but I went there and I did 4 drawings, and I really fell in love with that, going to the zoo and drawing. And it was this beautiful thing. Again, it was that thing that the zoo itself and the idea of putting animals behind a cage is so against my grain, yet I got time to spend with these beautiful creatures that, you know, it was like a meditation. I could just sit there, and all of a sudden the bars would go away, and all that, and I could sit there for a half an hour, or whatever it was,
Yeah,
and
get that energy going. I would
just
just
be.
say that your animals and your designs, your creations would make a great oracle deck.
Yeah, I've been asked. That's been said quite a many
Yeah, I'm sure
times.
that has, because they really would. They're quite, they're so beautiful and
Thank you.
whimsical.
Yeah, and so when I first did it, there's two Australian artists who are quite, well known, Brett Whiteley and John Olson. So I used to get a lot of, oh, you're in that vein, and I remember doing a lecture at New South Wales Gallery and on lyrical line, and I think it's very Australian, and if you look at Australian history of art, there is a lot of lyrical artists, and I think it goes with, traditionally Australia had a very lyrical language. We had a lot of isms, a lot of she'll be right, mate, and all those kinds of things that. And our landscape, there's a beautiful thing that when you look at early Australian painters that are mostly from Europe, they still gridded up the canvases, and they were used to painting landscapes that were very horizontal and vertical. European trees, like a lot of American trees, are very, very symmetrical. And then you get to Australia where the landscape is, you've kind of got the grid up, and then you've got a eucalyptus tree that just does, this.
Yeah.
And there is no, horizontal verticals. It's just this kind of like, scribble. And I think a lot of our landscape is that. And so we've been influenced. And then I think we were all also very influenced by Asian art. If you look at a lot of us, established Australian artists from a period before, a lot of them went to Asia, were influenced a lot by that lyrical line of Asian art. So yeah, the lyrical stuff just kind of came really, and then the animals, and then I fell in love with birds. I had a studio in Sydney
Yeah.
that was across the road from a park, and that park, was in where all the warehouses were. That park originally had been a brick pit, so it had these beautiful big old brick chimneys. Then it had been a tip, a dump. So when I got there, the government were trying to re-establish that land. So they'd plant all these trees, and after 10 years, the trees would only get to a certain height and die because of the methane in the ground. And then they just kept building it up and building it up. Now it's the most amazing park. And they're all over the world, those reclaimed parks. And I think the bird thing really happened was because I was in there one day and there was this giant bird. I was like, what are you? I've never seen this crazy big thing before. And I have this Reader's Digest, the Australian bird book. It's just fantastic. Like, it's the Bible of the Australian bird book. And all I could find was it was this brolga, which is a crane, in Australia. And I was like, wow. And I just got addicted. And then after 5 years of studying in that park, I got up to 52 native species of birds that would travel through that park at any one time. Whether if there was a drought in New South Wales, you'd get these birds that weren't usually in the city. Like you'd get kingfishers and things like that, which would come in and then again go out. And so and I think I was always obsessed with birds when I was younger, but I got really obsessed with birds.
I like birds too. I'm in my healing. I'm a feather healer, so I have many bird feathers, bird wings. Birds are a big part of my journey. I think that birds hold so much. In spirit, we use birds like the eagle, the crows. I have ravens tattooed, always speak your truth. They have no fear. They're very symbolic in spirit. When we see an eagle here flying, it's a big deal. Like, it's like, oh, the eagle, that's a sign from spirit, to keep going and stuff. And so I use birds as symbolism in my life. I find If you find a white feather on your path, that means you're walking on the right path. That's it. Your life is going in the right direction. Feathers, certain feathers mean things like if we find a finch feather, oh Lord, bring out the celebratory birthday cakes, and it's a big deal. It's like, wow, you know, that a flicker feather. If you find a flicker feather, man, people bow down to you, you know, it's a big deal. That's a very big gift from spirit, a flicker feather or a blue jay. And I don't know if you have these birds there, but I want to tell you, the most fascinating, beautiful bird I've ever seen with my own eyes is a red cardinal. And when I was a little girl, we don't have them here in Washington, but I was in Texas visiting a friend. I was living there, but I was at her house visiting. And all of a sudden I see this red flicker in the woods and I go, wow, what is that, I wonder? And she goes, oh, those are the cardinals. We have a family of cardinals. I go, cardinals live here? And she's like, yeah, you should go see. And I went out there. The most beautiful, vibrant red with, you know, black, you know, wing tipped, you know, just, and I was like, those are real, right? Because I'd only seen them in books until then. And I was like, they really exist. It's amazing. And yeah, I love birds and owls, especially. I've been blessed to, if you find an owl when you're on your path and it's alive and staring at you, that's a big deal. One day I found a white owl when I was with a healer friend of mine, and it just stared at us, and we just stared at it for the longest time, you know, gaining its wisdom. And a man walked by and he goes, what are you girls staring at? And we said, oh, the white owl. And he goes, oh my God, I've been looking for that white owl for years because it's a legend in this park, you know. And I'm like, we just found it, you know. It was pretty magical. Yeah. Anyway, that's my birds.
No, I'm completely with you with the bird thing, and they are. But like for me, I think birds are probably, I know this sounds kind of nutty because they're, you know, we would think, you know, monkeys and that, but I think birds are actually the closest to human beings. Like if the personality of birds, you know, and we have a lot of songbirds in Australia.
Well, The Language of Birds is a great book. I should turn you on to it.
Right. Yeah. But you know, for me, you watch birds and you kind of go, well, you know, they just, so much of human behavior and bird behavior is the same. And you know, that thing where you can meet people and you can go, they're that bird. You know,
yeah. Well, she's an odd bird. Yeah, I use that one a lot. Oh, she's just an odd bird.
Yeah. So you know, there's that kind of, for me, there's that great. And I think the other thing is with birds, you know, they fly, and I think there's this deep yearning, you know, to be able to fly. You know, I think that's why we love flying so much. You know,
it is, and I want to talk to you about flying and birds real quick. I have a murder of crows, and they're pretty well known, actually. There's thousands of them that live right over in this flock of trees over behind him. And every morning I see them fly, like just thousands of crows. And I take off my screen door and I hold my head out and I'm like, give me the crow energy. And they fly. And then every night about 8:45, 8 o'clock, as soon as the sun sets, hundreds of them start flying back. It's just the most amazing, beautiful thing. But I stick my head out there, and I was going somewhere with this, but then I got interrupted by a spirit. Oh yes, and the spiritual part of it, of the birds, is they very much connect us in the sense of the flying part. Right, that's where I was going. The astral traveling in dreams. Have you done this?
I have.
Because it is flying. Yeah. It is like flying. And when I do it, Gav, when I get to have the blessing of an astral travel, I get so excited. My son and I were talking about it. You are so happy, right? You're just free, and you're just, and they have a ride here, if you ever come to Washington, called the Wings of Washington. And it's, my daughter took me, and because she goes all the time, it's just it's tourist ride, right, on the waterfront of Seattle for $20 though. It's the most amazing. I was crying during it because it was so fucking like astral traveling and like my dreams when I'm flying. It takes you into an eagle, right? It starts off a totem pole because we're known for the native lands here, and then an eagle comes out and flies into you, and all of a sudden you're the eagle, and you're just flying through the waterfalls of the. It takes you all over the spots of Washington and the tulip fields. It smells like a little bit of tulip, but it was. If you ever come to Washington, we are going because you will fly, my friends. You will fly like a bird. It's amazing. And it goes right by the waterfall and it sprays a little mist, nothing crazy. I mean, and the tulip fields, and you just dive in like a bird does. It's so cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying is fun.
Yeah, flying, and it'd be good to have a tail again. I'd like to be back into the, being able to swing through the trees would be good. I think the evolution of human beings now, I get this two upright thing was a really big evolutionary jump when we were in, the savannas and we needed to be higher up and all that. But now in our modern world, the two-legged thing is kind of really not a very good evolutionary trait now because we sit all the time. We don't squat anymore.
Right. I walk a lot, but yeah, I don't. A lot of people I know don't.
No. So, really, we should be back on all fours, have a tail again, be much, much smarter. We could just swing through the trees. So it's kind of interesting how we've evolutioned ourselves out of what, the standing upright thing was made for walking. For walking long distances, for seeing over the top of things.
Right, for survival purposes, really, yeah, and you're right, not too many people walk or move anymore.
No.
Because they don't have to. They don't have to even go to the grocery store.
That's right. So bring back the
everything's dropped off at our doors here in America. And by the way, here in America is a big mess. And nobody wants to. We have mass shootings every day, everywhere. I mean, it's crazy. And people literally go into stores and just fill carts and walk out and don't pay, and nobody does anything. It's not even a crime in the state I live in.
Wow.
If you're hungry and you need food, just go take it. Nobody does anything, and businesses are shutting down. There's something bigger going on, but we could talk for hours about my conspiracy theories, okay? And we're not going to do that, Gab. We're here to talk about you.
No. I'm not very good. I'm not very good with the conspiracy theories because they exhaust me.
Oh my God, so much, so much going on. But that being said, it's tough.
Is human life just a conspiracy theory? Maybe that's the thing.
Well, see, that's what I'm
there the conspiracy.
And that, I've thought of that. Trust me. But let's bring it back to the art, because that's why I love art. That because I also do art. I'm not definitely at the scale of you, but I do it for my own therapy, for just an outlet to create. And I love, right now I'm really into glitter art. Like I'm just creating these massive pictures with paint and glitter, and I think they're incredible. But and I also do decoupage and cutting of the paper, which is really crazy, right? It's one of the worst forms you could use because it's just so messy. And but the pieces turn out amazing.
Yeah, I love your new the glitter painting. That abstracted one is just, it gets to such a depth to it, that scumbled. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of the glitter. I used to put a lot of glitter in my ice works because it magically,
pretty, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a really good glitter if you if you've got a bit of spare money, because everything in the art world costs a fortune. But you can get automotive glitter, so it's round and it's really, really fine, so you can spray it through a spray gun when you're spraying cars. So that's a beautiful glitter because when you put it in, you can't actually see it.
Right.
Like it's so small and so fine, because it's round. It's not like you can see it, but then you'll move your head in certain light, and then the light will pick up the glitter. So it's this beautiful thing that it's there.
Yeah.
It can be there and it can go away.
And that's what love about my pieces is that reason is, even in my decoupage, people have said, wow, those look 3D. I'm like, I love that because I like to create depth and I like the picture to change throughout the day. And with the glitter and the sparkles, that painting changes throughout the day. It hits different light and different sparkle shine. And I think I found my niche here with this glitter paint. I'm just digging it. It's a mess. It's all over my cement floors. I'm never gonna get rid of it, but it is what it is.
Be finding that glitter forever.
Yes, it's probably on my face. I noticed, but whatever. But that's what art does, I think that art is, to me, I love art. Like, my whole house is art. I buy too many pieces of art and have no room for them, but I'm just obsessed with art, especially I like to get unknown artists, people out locally. I go to art fairs and, oh, I found this really cool print the other day of this rubber doll that somebody created. I was like, this is so cool, for $5, and I like your art for many reasons. And I'm always just so blown away that you even talk to me, because you're so amazing. I'm getting emotional, but you're one of the most creative individuals I've ever not met in person, but met. And because your art is so expressive, not just your paintings and your doodles, but your dance and just your passion that you have for your art. That's exciting to me.
Thank you.
Because you can see it in your art.
Well, I kind of, for me, I think everything is art. I wish, to be honest with you, I wish we could get rid of the word art.
Oh.
I think the word art, like most words, have become, like anything, labels that segregate, which we're full of. Human beings have so many labels that are about segregation.
God, don't get me started.
It's our natural thing. We want to label things. But I think also with my art, like, I kind of came from the idea of, let's go back to theater, it's dimensional. So when I was, the line drawings or the continuous line drawings or scribble drawings or whatever we want to call them, they're not my technique. People have been doing it for years. Picasso was doing his version, which was his 4-line drawings. And I think for me, it's that trying to bring the dimension into two-dimensional. We live in such a two-dimensional world. At the moment, we're in a two-dimensional world where we're watching each other on a screen.
Right.
Yet we're dimensional, yet we're seeing each other two-dimensional. We go to, I love that thing that we go to the mirror to look at something we already know what we look like. And we go to the mirror and we traditionally go and look at a two-dimensional still image of ourselves, which is kind of crazy. And so, like, during lockdown, when I started dancing every day and posting it, one of the most fantastic things for me was, and at the time I was doing a lot of Bonnie Bainbridge's, the BMC, the body mind centering movement work, and learning embryology and biology. But what I realized is, watching myself back every single day, you start to go, oh, that's actually what I really look like. Oh, my mouth is completely bent. My nose is completely smashed to one side. Like all these little nuances that you find. And, when I first started, I realized I was closing my heart in because, I was going through some, like many people, some pretty emotional stuff. And all of a sudden, out of that, you grow and you start to open up that heart center, and then my dancing became much more wider.
I watched all of that progression, yeah.
So it's that beautiful thing that, finding our dimension again, I think, is one of the biggest, human needs at the moment. Is to, I remember doing, I've been doing some corporate, human-centered design work, and I often walk into those corporate spaces and I look at everybody and go, what are you doing? in banks and that, and insurance companies, and we employ a lot of people that sit behind computers and push around invisible numbers all day. And you go, wow, so that bank makes nothing. It doesn't, it doesn't physically make even the money that they're exchanging. Their whole world is a very 2D world. And I think that reflects in so much of now. I mean, technology especially, we take selfies constantly, another two-dimensional representation of ourselves. And I've always loved that thing that, we call realism in art, still life or photorealism. And for me, that's a real abstraction. Like, nothing looks like that, because everything's dimensional, everything's in movement.
And now we have AI, Gav, AI. I went down the AI hole the other night, my friend, because I'm on this spiritual ascension and I can't freaking sleep, right? So I'm like, okay, since I can't sleep, I'll just fill my head with knowledge, right? So I go to AI and I'm like, what is this AI? And I'm fascinated by it. It can do anything. And I'm like, this can go south real quick, or you can benefit from it, And so I'm still exploring it. But you can teach workshops with AI. I mean, it's crazy. And I started thinking I might have to use AI. I think it might be kind of fun because there's so much you can do with it. And it can write my whole life story for me in a book. I'm like, what? And so I'm exploring that option more. I'm seeing what I can do for me to help me build my brand and my business more than anything. But I think I'm a believer that technology is a really good tool right now for us in the world, because it's bringing people like you and me together. But just like anything, Gab, just like art, even, people can use it to destroy people. People can use it to hurt people, right? It's just the choices that you make in using technology, I think. And I would use it to benefit, to help people and benefit, not to,
I think there's a lot. Yeah, and I think that was the thing with lockdown, wasn't it? I think that I ran a lot of classes on Zoom over lockdown, and as I said, we were in it for a long time down here.
I remember, yeah.
There was dancing, and I was running dyslexic, quiz nights, which were really fun because they were just stupid. And I was taking my yoga classes free online, and meditation. Using the imagination to open up that meditative space. And so it was beautiful because it kind of connected people that traditionally wouldn't probably come to a meditation class or a yoga class or whatever.
Right.
So it did open up people to, doing things they might not have necessarily done. But it also, my other worry is, that we are running so fast now that we're losing the connection in the dimensional sense. Like, we were laughing about the other day. I ran into a friend in the streets here in this little town I live in, and I hadn't seen her in 25 years. And she went, how did we back in 1987 meet? I don't even know where we met, to be honest with you. Out of New York. She was in America doing school camp thing, like your school camp things, and anyway. So she'd gone over there. We met somewhere, and then we went off and whale watched, and we were like, how did we meet to get in a car to drive? And we were just laughing, going, well, you just did. Both of us have completely forgotten how we did that, because we're so
we drove to places.
Yeah,
without the GPS.
Without the GPS, that's right, with a big book sitting on your lap going on.
Yeah, or your friend would just go. You go 2 blocks, look for the 7-Eleven, turn left. You know what I mean? If you pass the stop sign that's painted pink, you went too far. I mean, that's how it was done, and you would write it down, but I think about that too. And it was funny, we're talking about this because just the other day I was saying, I miss the 80s.
Yeah.
This world is crazy. It's gone too far sometimes, and we have become very detached as human beings, it's sad really. And I really want to build community. I really want to have that, but it is difficult to do in person. I don't know why.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of our intuition we've kind of I think we're conflicted at the moment. There's on one side there's this big spiritual movement and this big push, but yet it's become a commodity. It's become another business. I was talking to my yoga teacher, and she was like, "When were you the happiest when you were teaching?" And I said, "When I was doing it for free." She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because for me, there's this. I mean, it's human. We have to do it. We all have to make a living, but there's this diametric imposing forces going on constantly where we want the world to be better, we want the world to be healthier, and we want the world to be spiritually more and tuned and kinder, and that yet we've just made another business out of it, and
we have, yeah.
So therefore, and there's a hierarchical position in that. There's the super expensive, like, I'd like to right now go to one of those really, really expensive health resorts and just have someone pamper me for a week. And
I would too. I'm trying to get to a Joe Dispenza retreat, and that's pricey.
Yeah,
it's pricey to heal yourself, but luckily we have YouTube and again, social media. I mean, not social media, but the internet. This is where it's good because now instead of paying that, I can get it for my monthly subscription to YouTube instead, which is cheaper. And so we can still learn, which I really like, and to show you the state of affairs that this country is in, that we are in America. Okay, and don't laugh too hard. Donald Trump has been indicted, he's whatever several times, but he's also the #1 leading presidential candidate. It's crazy, right? Like, if he ran today, he would win. I predict if he runs, he will win again. There's no doubt in my mind because we're so screwed up here, and there's no candidates here. But it just cracks me up because that just shows you where we are mentally, like what is happening. And what I've discovered, Gab, and then our time will be running up, but I have learned I can't think about the outside world so much because I will go bonkers because it makes no sense. It makes no sense what's going on in this country anyway. I don't know about Australia, but I'm like, I heard that statistic and that he is the #1 primary Republican candidate at this point. And I said, but didn't he just get indicted though? Like, this is crazy. And so I just have to go, you know what? I can't control it. I can vote, that's it, but I still can't control anything except myself and my goals and what my vision is or what I want to share with the world. And that's it. And once I think we master that, we definitely need to pay attention and participate, in politics and do the right voting and all that. But we also just need to focus on ourselves.
I think
and making connection again with people in our lives.
Definitely connection again. I mean, like really, I think the whole politics worldwide, it's a system that doesn't work. It's a theater show that it doesn't speak a language. I think there's that fantastic really that short comment by Ronald Reagan back whenever it was with one of your television host shows where Ronald Reagan says the problem is politics, and of course it is. You give the power over to any system that, let's face it, even or here especially Liberal and Labor, they're the same party really. Like yours, Republicans and Democrats, They're the same party. They're not. They're both happy just to either be number one or number two. They're all getting paid nicely.
They're taking care of. You're right. What do they care?
There's no other party. There's no other. Yeah. There's no other. Like, wait a minute. There's 50, 100. We've got it here now. We've got so many parties. But can they do anything? People go, wow, they get into the Senate and all that. But the system itself is a broken system. It on one hand, it lets the everyday person off from having to think about what is morally or what is needed in life. And then on another hand, it gives us another thing to rally against. Which,
they rally. I mean, the things here and the whole sensitivity about being called, misgendered and all of this is just too out of control for me. And that's when I just go, you know what? Call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner, Gab, because that's just so unimportant to me that somebody calls me a man or a woman. It doesn't matter to me. Or a cunt or a bitch, or say whatever you need, And I think we put too much focus on our reaction to things before we think it through.
Definitely.
We always just react and I try to tell people, we all have to learn to get along. And instead of getting angry at somebody, just explain to them, hey, I'm sorry, you misgendered me, and I actually identify as this, and I'd appreciate it if you just did that. And then they can go, oh, okay, instead of yelling and screaming and calling them names, because isn't our human reaction, I'm sure in Australia too, because you're just humans, is to fight back.
Yeah.
But if we just talk to each other and explain things, everything will be better, right? I mean,
yeah, it doesn't seem really that hard, and I think it's that thing, like going back to my work, it's that, I guess, as an artist or whatever word we want to use, I have this thing that I think everybody's an artist and everybody is constantly in 24/7 in the imagination. So for me, imagination is what makes us human, and whether other creatures imagine, we don't know, and I don't know. But for us,
right,
if you look at humans, I always like to say, imagine what it was like when the first seat was invented. Like when the first person, sat on a log or something and went, oh, great, I'm off the ground, and then went, I'm nomadic, and picked up the log and got, 20 yards down the road and went, this log is just ridiculously heavy. And someone thought, maybe, oh, let's cut the inside out. And then, that went from there. And then, well, maybe if we make 4 poles and, whatever it is, that evolution of a seat, it came from an imaginative point. What socks people put on in the morning, what clothes we wear, what breakfast cereal we choose, comes from, at some point, an imaginative or creative moment. It becomes habitual, and we lose, I guess, the thrill of when you first got that. I've discovered Cocoa Pops, or whatever it was, that, Frosty Fruits or whatever, and you're just like, wow, sugar rush, But you discovered something new, your imagination was blown away. As we talk now, you're imagining me, I'm imagining you. Anyone listening to this is imagining, multiple things. So, everybody is creative in that sense. Everybody, in embryology sense, we all built ourselves from these cells that magically make this.
right.
That even the word God, how we've turned it into such a tiny little conceptual understanding that has its situation sitting in then these other labels called religions, which are these incredible creative spaces, these theater shows. Well, we don't know, best scientists don't know, the best anybody doesn't know how does it actually really happen? Like, how do you, how does that biggest cell in the body, the egg, pass down through 2 generations, and this other cell called sperm come together? How does the sperm know to go left or right? Like, how does all these things know to do this?
Crazy, right? I mean,
That's the beautiful thing, that's
beautiful
that
miracle of it all.
miracle of it all, the creativity of it all, the
Right.
imagination of it all. This thing called life, really, for me, we could call art. It's the discovery of what we don't know.
And you're creating your life
Yeah,
with your imagination.
your imagination, and unfortunately, we don't all play nicely in the sandpit.
No, we don't. Not everyone does, Gav. That's a fact. That is a fact.
And
Well,
I've been
anyway,
thinking about a lot about it lately. I live in a studio, which really, as an artist, I am so environmentally unsound. I'm just full with plastic bottles, uh, you know, toxic paints, you know,
glitter,
glitter, so I'm really an environmental nightmare
right?
to some degree. So yeah, I don't know, I guess if we could all just be nice, it would be nice. That would be nice.
That's my
Although,
goal, is just to be a kinder person, number one to myself and then to others, and keep growing and keep making connections and developing friendships and living my life the best way I can. That's my goal. And I have no control over anything but myself. And I finally learned and figured all that out. And I'm like, okay, now that I've got control over myself, I'm using my imagination to imagine what I can create in the future. And I use art a lot to do with it too. So this has been fun, Gav.
can I say one last thing? I think that there's also around that beautiful thing that when when I met you, and I met you through a beautiful dear friend of mine who passed away, and even when we can go into the woo woo, we can do all those things with what you gift, even the word as psychic or whatever we want to use these words as. The simple fact is, when somebody can tune into you, whether that's your mother, whether that's your family, whether that's your closest friends, and they gift you some understanding, and then that understanding, we consciously understand that it happens to us, so we
Right.
that's that beautiful gift. That's that exchange of artist audience thing. There's that beautiful, I think we even tend to think of prayer or that gift that somebody has for us. Often today we take it out in a junket way as well. Oh, great, I got a little bit of something for a moment, and where they're those moments that can change your life. They're those moments that, like standing in front of a Francis Bacon, or getting um, a poetry book put in your hand, or someone saying to you, this is going to happen for you. That's that
Yeah.
beautiful exchange. It's not separate. It's not you being separate from me, or me being separate from you. It's the coming together and saying, now we are connected.
And that's what happened through the mutual friend we had. I met him and his wife, and we instantly just bonded. So the three of us so amazingly, and that's, yeah. And then I met you, and we bonded. I clearly do well with Australians. Um,
But
what
you
I mean,
shared.
I always say they're my biggest fans. Australians, they are, though. They're the most supportive
So you're going to go
friends
you're going to
and
go the
clients. Huh?
You're going to go the Germans with the whole cabaret show.
The Germans love me as well. They love the channeling
That's
and
right.
the Motorhead shirts.
But that channeling thing, like that's what I guess I'm saying. Like we can take it as a woo woo thing, or something kind of out there, or we can take it as that thing of a connection between two people who
Right.
feel something for each other, and pass that knowledge, like which is what as parents you do constantly, which is magical. How did you work out, what to
Right.
feed your child? Or whether it's you're religious and you believe in prayer in its religious form, they're all, for me, they're all that beautiful, creative, and inspirational imagination that we get to share with people to connect.
Yeah.
And when comes from a it comes from a hearted place, I guess, or a space of there's a genuineness to it. That's when the doors open, and that's when the magic can
I
happen.
think that, yeah, and I think that's when we feel alive too, like we matter, and when we have those connections, that's why I think it's so important to have connections with people, is it does it kind of pumps blood into us, into our heart again, and go, oh yeah, there are people like me. I'm not alone. I am alive. I have an existence. I can do things. And I know we have to wrap this up, but one thing I want to say, because you mentioned it too, that everyone is an artist. And when I hear people say, oh, I'm not an artist, I can't do that, I'm like, I always stop them, yeah, and say, you are an artist. Art isn't about perfection. Art isn't about you have to be like anyone else. Art is your expression. That's all it is. And I go through different phases of art. Sometimes I paint really dark. Sometimes I do my decoupage really dreamlike. Other time, now I'm in a glitter phase. I just want to sparkle. So, and it's with my moods and my journey in life too. And I think that I try to explain that to people. It's not about, I don't know how to paint. You know how to paint.
Well, can I say this last thing? So on that level, look, anyone can learn techniques.
Right.
I was dyslexic. Was illiterate till I was 22. I learned to read. It took me a long time. I had some beautiful teachers. I had a Franciscan monk who, at night or at university, who was our history of theatre lecturer, who spent 3 years teaching me, la 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 la. The last piece I just did at the regional gallery was the mark making piece, the thing you talked about at the start with the children. And, that was just movement, sound movement, and mark making. Now, mark making is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. There's not a lot I can find online about it, but it is getting bigger. And mark making, for me, those works were beautiful. After 4 hours of public just mark making, you end up with these amazing works that
Yeah.
just got so much depth to them. But what I love about mark making is you take away the need for a word or for an image. Because as soon as we go into an image or a word, we've kind of, to some degree, put a bookend on it. We've given it a meaning. So therefore, people will take it in different ways and their own meaning to that meaning, which is only somebody else's imaginative meaning. You often the artist. But mark making, there is none of that. We take away the words, we take away the need for pictures, and we just allow the body to express, this movement.
Right.
And what I love about that is that's when you find out, well, then there you go. Everybody is this creative spirit. Everybody can put a mark down on a piece of paper with a stick in the dirt, and I think the more we can do that, the more we can maybe get out some of this energy that at the moment, we started this conversation with me being pretty flat.
Yeah.
Like, how do we stimulate?
Yeah.
It's allowing.
Well, I love this conversation with you, Gav, and I hope to have you back on again. And I appreciate you taking time out of your life for me, for with a little fun. And
do I get like do I get does everybody at the end of this get like a card, one card read or something? Do you have a little what? Where's the present?
I'm the present.
Where's the I do love how Krista Tippett, Krista Tippett from On Being, that podcast, American podcast. She tends to open every podcast with the similar question is where, what was your religious or faith-based background from when you were, young? Which I always find really interesting from people because, some I didn't have any, and some had, like the full experience. But yeah, no, I think it'd be great if on these podcasts, if you could just push through the, the computer of the present, like the gift afterwards.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Maybe AI can do that.
We're nearly there.
AI is the way. I actually do have a present for you. They asked me to draw a card because you're going through something right now. And they gave you the Freya card, and look, she has a bird, a crow on her.
Oh, so what's her card?
Phases and cycles. So you're going through phases right now, and you need to pay attention to what is happening to yourself in this cycle of your life, because it's meant to bring you into your next phase where you're supposed to be. And Freya can help you just calm down and bring you to that center of space, and her raven who speaks the truth. The truth will set you free, yeah, and have no fear into this. Pick yourself back up. Feel me?
Feel you.
I feel you. All right, Gav, thanks for your time, and we will talk again. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you. Love you too. Bye.